One of the important skills that leaders need to embrace is the skill of the technology teenager. And it pretty much is exactly what it sounds like. If you've ever had a problem with a piece of technology, whether it's your Wi-Fi, your TV, your phone, your tablet, whatever it is, if you have kids, chances are you know the feeling of like, you go to one of your kids and say, hey, my Wi-Fi is down, you know what's going on? Or, hey, can you fix my phone? Something's wrong with it. And somehow kids are just adept at figuring this stuff out. It's not because they're coders, it's not because they're developers, it's not because they've built these things, but it's because they're not scared to tinker, to play around with, to experiment, to see how these things work. And that's really what the skill of the technology teenager is all about. It doesn't matter if you're 22, 42, 72, right? This is a skill that you need to embrace. Do you want to hear something really crazy? 96% of the people who watch videos on this channel are not subscribed. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. It'll literally take you 1 second, and you'll get notified when more videos just like this one are available. Now, let's get back to the content. Every company today is a technology company, which means every leader needs to be a technology-driven leader. I don't mean that you need to know how to code. I'm not asking you to create your own blockchain or design your own form of artificial intelligence, but from a high level as a leader, you need to understand what these different technologies are. You need to understand from a high level how they work. And from a high level, you need to understand where the opportunities are. Where are the potential threats? That is really what the skill of the technology teenager is all about. Don't run from technology, you have to embrace it. Another one of the important skills that leaders need to practice and embrace is the skill of the futurist. And futurists don't predict the future. A futurist simply helps make sure that you're not surprised by what the future might bring. And I like to use the analogy of chess. One of the things that separates really good chess players is that they have the ability to think in terms of scenarios and possibilities. So if you've ever played chess, or for example, any other kind of board game as well, you know that one of the things that really helps is your ability to think in terms of these scenarios and possibilities. Now let's take chess as a specific example. In the game of chess, whenever you make a move, you're constantly thinking, well, how might my opponent respond? Like if I move my pawn, my opponent could move their bishop, they could move their knight, they could move their pawn, maybe they could move their queen. And if they do one of those things, here's how I'm going to respond. In other words, you're thinking of those different scenarios and possibilities all the time. Interestingly enough, this was ranked as the #1 skill for current and aspiring leaders, according to the 140 CEOs that I interviewed. And it's precisely because we live in a world that is changing so quickly that we are oftentimes very obsessed and focused on one path and going down that only path. And when problems arise and when we get derailed, our mentality is like, no, nothing is gonna stop us, like keep plowing ahead. Even though everyone else around you is looking at you going like, that's probably not the best approach. Because we don't think oftentimes in terms of those scenarios and possibilities. Funny enough, we do a pretty good job of thinking like this in our personal lives. I think about the time when you went on a first date or when you bought a house. You know, your first date, you're immediately thinking, how is this person gonna respond in a difficult situation? Can I spend the rest of my life with this person? Can I have kids with this person? Can I bring this person home to my parents? And you already start going through these scenarios and possibilities. Same thing when you buy a house. Is the value gonna go up or down? What's gonna happen to the schools? You think about the future and all these different options. But at work, as soon as you show up to the office, you're kind of just smacked in the face with like, here, respond to this email, do this task, do this project. And that thinking, that part of our brain just shuts down. And we're just focused on to-do list, task, check off, check, and that's it. And that thinking, like a futurist, is completely, it just doesn't happen inside of our organizations, which is pretty scary when you think about that. So the skill of the futurist is really about asking 4 questions on a regular basis. And if you can implement and ask these 4 questions, I think that it will teach you how to embrace this skill. You can ask these questions for big decisions, or you can ask them for smaller things that you're trying to consider. So the 4 questions are, #1 is, why might this happen? So regardless of what you're pondering, ask yourself, what would cause this to happen? Why might this happen? Second question, what else might happen? So what's another scenario that might arise? Okay. Third question to ask yourself is, what are some of the factors that are going to influence or that could influence why something will or will not happen? And the last question, which I think is the most important one, which is what do you want to happen? This is the one that oftentimes people forget to ask. We oftentimes say things like, what is the future of work? But the reality is that we should be asking, what is the future of work that you want to see happen? Because otherwise you put yourself in a very passive role. It's as if something's going to happen to you and all you can do is just kind of brace for impact. But the reality is that you have an active role to create and design and shape what the future of work is going to look like. So you have to ask yourself, what do I want the future to look like, and how am I going to build that future? And I think if you can start to embrace these 4 questions on a regular basis, you will inherently start to embrace this skill of the futurist.